Okay. Hey everyone, welcome. We are just getting started now. Thank you so much for joining the Illinois Environmental Council for our Lunch and Learn Deep Dive series. We hope these sessions will help keep our community connected and informed. Just want to say, my name is Samira Hnessian, Energy Policy Director with IEC, and I'm excited to welcome you all to today's Lunch and Learn Deep Dive, Clean Buildings and Clean Jobs. This is the final installment of our three-part series on building decarbonization. Moderating the chat for us today is my colleague Paloma Campillo, Digital Engagement Manager with IEC. I'd like to note a few housekeeping items before we begin. All attendees are muted by default. If you joined by Zoom, please use the chat function to ask questions, add comments, provide resources, and then time permitting, we will take live questions at the end of the session. So in terms of who IEC is, we were founded in 1975 by a group of dedicated grassroots environmentalists. And since then, IEC has led issue advocacy campaigns by allowing environmental organizations to pool their resources and create a higher profile for environmental issues. IEC's headquarters is based in the state's capital in Springfield, and we also have an office in downtown Chicago. In terms of what we do, today, IEC represents more than 100 environmental and community organizations operating in the state of Illinois. If you are not already a member of IEC and are able to give, please consider joining today by using the link in the chat box or joining our live silent auction as part of our annual fundraiser. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. And I would like to introduce our speakers. So, Michaela, you're welcome to start sharing your screen anytime. For today's session, we are very pleased to have Michaela Preskill, Brian Imus, and Ryan Wilmington. We'll start with introductions to Michaela and her work, and then I'll introduce Brian and Ryan ahead of their presentations. So for Michaela Preskill is E2's Midwest Advocate. E2 is a network of business leaders from all across the economy. Through research, strong communications, and direct advocacy, Michaela's role is to work with our Midwest members to advance strong environmental policies. She focuses her efforts on state and local policy in Illinois and Michigan, and also spends time advocating members of Congress in DC on policies like the Inflation Reduction Act, which passed last year. Each year, under Michaela's leadership, E2 releases the Clean Jobs Midwest Report every year, which details the number of clean energy jobs in every state, country, and district throughout the region. Before joining E2, Michaela ran issue electoral and recruitment campaigns in Illinois, Colorado, Washington State, and Massachusetts for the public interest research group, PIRG. And with that, I'll pass the mic over to Michaela.
Thanks so much, Samira, and thanks so much for organizing this great discussion. Excited to be here today. So I will take a second to introduce E2 and then talk about clean jobs and how we can grow clean jobs by investing in clean buildings. So I'll just dive right in. So first off, just really quick, so Samira did a great job introducing E2 in her intro of me. E2, we're a national network of business leaders. So our members are business leaders from all 50 states who do business in all parts of the economy. And we work to raise the voices of business leaders to make the case that policies that are good for the environment are good for the economy too. We do that through research and reports, which we'll talk a lot about today. And we just released a report earlier this week, Clean Jobs Midwest, which documents clean energy jobs, and communications by pushing those reports out to the media, which we'll also talk a little bit about today, and also amplifying the perspectives of business leaders through quotes, social media, and op-eds and letters to the editors. and direct advocacy, bringing business leaders directly to lawmakers to make the case that clean energy policy grow jobs and support our economy. That's E2. And it is so fitting that we are talking today about clean energy jobs because on Tuesday, E2, in partnership with the Evergreen Climate Innovations and the Illinois Clean Jobs Coalition, released Clean Jobs Midwest. Clean Jobs Midwest is our annual report, which surveys the number of clean energy jobs in the Midwest region. We look at 12 Midwest states, and we detail the number of clean energy jobs by sector and have that data break down all the way to the county and metro, metro area level. So there are 734,000 jobs, over 734,000 jobs across the 12-state Midwest region. And this is a significant part of the Midwest economy. It's growing and is poised to grow like we've never seen before. Now, I know we're all Illinoisans here, so of course I'm going to spend time really talking about what this industry looks like in Illinois. But first, just a little background on what we track. So the Clean Jobs Midwest report tracks 5 sectors within the clean energy industry. The first is energy efficiency. This is the manufacturing and installation of energy efficiency appliances. It's also people going into homes, providing retrofits that make their houses use less energy and the air healthier. So maybe that's updating insulation, updating windows, updating boilers to be more efficient or to transition to heat pumps, etc. So that's energy efficiency. Also, renewable energy generation. I think this is what most people think of first when they think of clean energy jobs, like someone climbing onto a rooftop and installing solar. So we've tracked those people too, but we track well beyond that. So people who are installing wind, solar, geothermal, bioenergy, and low impact hydrogen energy. Also clean transportation. This is electric and hybrid electric vehicles and jobs that support those technologies. And then 2 smaller but emerging fields, grid and storage and clean fuels. So what does the clean energy industry look like in Illinois? Well, there are over 123,000 clean energy jobs in Illinois. The vast majority of those jobs are in energy efficiency. There's a lot of numbers on this slide. I'm going to just kind of give you the highlights. But if you want to poke around and find more about all these various stats, definitely check out cleanjobsmidwest.com. But the key things to know here are energy efficiency. The vast majority of clean energy jobs are in energy efficiency. And that not only is a great source of the workforce, but also a place that can grow substantially as we invest in clean energy in buildings and really grow that sector. The thing that I always, this is true for all these jobs, but especially energy efficiency, these jobs cannot be outsourced. A lot of these jobs are people going into homes and providing those retrofits. So these are, jobs that can really benefit people everywhere that there's a building, which is every corner of Illinois. The industry that for the last few years has been growing most rapidly is clean transportation. So last year we saw growth of 7% in the clean transportation industry. And as we see automakers transition to electric vehicles and invest in this new technology, we expect that to continue to be a real highlight of the growth of the industry. So those are the 2 things I wanted to, again, lots of numbers here, but those are the 2 big highlights. And if you want to spend more time with these numbers, check out cleanjobsmidwest.com. So while this industry is robust and covers such a wide swath of technology, it's also growing. So in Illinois, we tracked 3% growth over the last year. And actually, if you look at the last 2 years, Illinois clean energy jobs grew by 8% since 2020. That's faster than the overall economy. Again, clean vehicles has really been a leader in this growth. And while not surprisingly, Chicago is the largest hub for clean energy, a lot of these jobs are in rural areas. More than 17,000 jobs are outside of Illinois' big metropolitan areas. And one of my favorite stats about the clean energy industry in Illinois is that the vast majority is small business. So we found that 73% of the state's clean energy businesses employ fewer than 20 individuals. So when we invest in clean energy and we grow clean energy jobs, our entire economy benefits for a few reasons. One, we're investing in small businesses. Two, we're investing in an industry that really covers the entire state. And three, clean energy covers such a wide swath of the economy, from manufacturing, investment, construction, etc. And the Inflation Reduction Act is changing the game. And in Illinois, the Inflation Reduction Act is really complemented by strong state policies like the Climate and Equitable Jobs Act. At E2, we've been tracking the number of large-scale clean energy projects that have come online thanks to the investments and incentives in the Inflation Reduction Act. And in just the first year, we've tracked over 200 projects that are bringing about $86 billion in private investment and creating tens of thousands of jobs. Of those projects we've tracked, over a quarter are in the Midwest. A lot of those jobs haven't even come to fruition yet. So the IRA, in combination with state policies like CEJA, when I'm excited to see what this report that we will show when we release it next year, because we really anticipate growth to be increasing in exponential ways. Who are the workers? So I know a real focus today is talking about the building sector. This guy, Eric at Citi, is a great example of the jobs that we can create by investing in building electrification and efficiency, which will be critical to hitting our climate goals. Eric works at a company called Verde Energy Efficiency. And when that company was founded, they primarily went into buildings and replaced light bulbs. That was a key way for a long time to save energy in buildings. And over time, that company has evolved to be for its scope to be far beyond updating light bulbs, but to really help transition buildings to be fully decarbonized. So in this particular profile, talks about the work that he did at the Oak Park Temple, transitioning it to all electric by updating its HVAC system. And he talks about the new skills that he's learning in that job and how he's excited about all the opportunity for future work and for positions like his to grow and to bring on more workers to tackle this next phase of tackling the climate crisis, which is to move to all electric buildings. So when we look at really tackling climate emissions from buildings, these are the types of jobs that will be supported by this transition. HVAC mechanics who will be installing and servicing and repairing new heating and cooling systems, construction laborers who will doing a lot of the physical labor, electricians like the one that we saw in the last slide, installing energy efficient appliances, installation workers, as we look to make sure that buildings are efficient, it's the insulation is a key piece of that. And that's an entire workforce that's supported by keeping buildings as most efficient as possible. Going back to the Clean Jobs Midwest report for a second, we released the new data about the clean energy workforce on Tuesday, and we've gotten some press. So just wanted to show some of that here. Part of the reason why we release the Clean Jobs Midwest report each year is we're helping to really shift. When we first started releasing this report about 10 years ago, there was a narrative out there that clean energy kills jobs. And we wanted to shift that narrative. So we started releasing the Clean Energy Report, Clean Jobs Midwest report, to show that clean energy is a job creator. And I think that narrative has really changed. President Biden, for example, on the campaign trail said, when I think climate change, I think jobs. And so the report each year is a great tool in helping to build that narrative, helping to really equate climate action with job creation, and keep that front and center for all of us and also our lawmakers. So, because it's so important to get this data out to as many eyes and ears as possible, if you're interested, you can share some of the top findings of the report on your social media. I think Paloma is going to put a link. Yeah, got it. It's already in the chat. And if you go to this link, you'll not only see the sample language that's on this slide that you can just copy and paste and update as you see fit, but you'll also see a link to some of the graphics that you've already seen here in this presentation that you can share on your social media as well. So help us spread the word. All right, Few final takeaways. There are more than 3 times as many Illinoisans that work in clean energy as the number of lawyers, web developers, and real estate agents combined. It's a huge part of the Illinois economy, and it's growing and poised for growth like never before. And one of the things that will set us up for strong future job growth is strong policies, which is a great segue to Brian and Ryan's portion of the talk today. So thanks so much. I'm looking forward to your questions later.
Thanks, Michaela. That was wonderful and super informative. By way of introduction, our next speakers are with the Illinois Green Alliance, a membership-driven nonprofit that works to advance healthy and sustainable buildings and communities. I would like to start off by introducing Ryan Wilmington, who is the Policy and Communications Associate at Illinois Green Alliance. He works to advance building decarbonization policy, promote net zero buildings, and support communications and outreach efforts. Before joining Illinois Green, Ryan worked at the Cook County Forest Preserve as a policy fellow. And in his role, he researched and developed forest preserve policy across the variety of subjects, including sustainability, equity, and more. Ryan is a graduate of the University of Illinois at Chicago with a bachelor's degree in public policy and with a focus on sustainability. Next, we have Brian Imus, who is the executive director of Illinois Green, where he utilizes his more than 15 years of nonprofit management experience to manage the operations and staff and develop the overall strategy for the organization. Mr. Imus has been involved with environmental issues and sustainability since graduating with a degree in planning, public policy, and management from the University of Oregon's School of Architecture. Prior to joining Illinois Green, he worked for the Public Interest Research Group in Michigan, or PIRG, where he helped to coordinate a successful campaign to reduce mercury pollution from coal-fired power plants and worked to implement new legislation to combat urban sprawl. He's also testified before state legislative committees and authored several reports on a wide range of public interest issues. For example, his report on chemical compliance and analysis of toxics found in children's products led to the national recall of a children's toy containing lead. With that, Brian, I'm happy to pass the mic to you.
Thank you very much, Samira, and huge thank you to the Illinois Environmental Council for putting on this Lunch and Learn. I love talking about building decarbonization and its link to jobs. what I'd like to leave all of you with is just a better sense of the important role that building decarbonization policy plays in creating meaningful jobs for people here in Illinois, really building on exactly what Michaela was talking about, that there's a lot of momentum there, but with even further policy, with successful implementation of many of the policies that exist already, we can really build on all of that momentum that Michaela was talking about. So I'm going to start it off and talk a little bit about that, and then I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Ryan, to share a little bit more about some of the opportunity we have around building decarb policy moving forward. First, a little on First, a little bit about Illinois Green Alliance. For those that aren't familiar, we are a membership-driven nonprofit that promotes green buildings and sustainable communities. And when I say members, our members are actually building professionals who have a passion for wanting to leverage what they do professionally to protect the environment. So it's a lot of folks in industries like architecture, real estate, construction industry, trades and labor, and they all just associate with us because they want to learn about the latest trends and technologies to make buildings more energy efficient, and they want to give back their expertise to make a huge difference. We go about advancing our mission in a number of different ways. Critical to what we want to accomplish as an organization, we've set a big, bold goal of making every single building in Illinois a net zero building by 2050. That is a big and bold vision that is certainly challenging to achieve. But I think that we're in a unique position as an organization that represents building professionals who understand the technologies to make net zero feasible and affordable. We're just in a unique position to be able to make that happen. Critical to making that happen, and a key part of that strategy is scaling the technologies to make buildings more energy efficient, to electrify our buildings, to get them off of gas through policy. And we're already seeing huge momentum. I'm sure many of the folks, many of you are already familiar with the Climate and Equitable Jobs Act. It's already the law of the land here in Illinois for the last 2 years. It's just now being implemented, and we're starting to see the success there. At the federal level, the Inflation Reduction Act that Michaela referenced, and then at the city level, we're starting to see attention paid by the mayor and the city council on just the important role that policy can play in addressing our climate crisis while also creating jobs. I think building professionals, their voice is really critical in developing and implementing the policy because they actually understand how to build a building and how buildings actually operate to make them energy efficient. What you see here on the screen, we actually went to our members and did a survey recently over the last couple of years, and also did some kind of one-on-one focus groups with our members who represent different industries. And these were the big takeaways that we heard. I mean, first and foremost, they agree that building decarbonization and electrification will not happen in the way that we really need to have it happen to address the climate crisis without policy. So they recognize that that is the direction that we need to go, and we need policy to encourage all of the actors in the building industry to do what we need to do. Second, they recognize that there are a lot of services and resources and programs out there for building professionals to be able to decarbonize their buildings, but it's really confusing. You can see the quote up there is 22 different energy efficiency programs. It's hard to tell which one is the right one for my situation or for what I'm trying to accomplish. So that's great that there's so many programs out there, but clearly some confusion about how to address that. And then the last thing that I really want to stress that we've heard quite a bit about, especially from developers and owners of buildings, is just the need for a trained workforce who understands the technologies and best practices associated with building decarbonization. If there's not a trained workforce out there, it's going to make the transition more expensive and harder to accomplish. And a lot of the folks that we work with say it's really hard to find the contractors who have the expertise, or we need more contractors out there so that we can lower the costs for doing this type of work. So that's really, really important. Fortunately, there are a lot of services and programs out there for us, thanks to the Climate and Equitable Jobs Act. So under that law that was passed 2 years ago and signed by Governor Pritzker, that climate action policy recognized the need to make sure that there are people ready to take the jobs that are going to be created by the passage of building decarbonization policy. What you see on the screen here is just a snapshot or a picture of the role that the Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity have in creating different training programs for individuals so they can get trained to get jobs, for contractors, a lot of the support services that are out there that are so important. So fortunately, the Climate and Equitable Jobs Act recognized this. We need to get these programs up and running, and the intention is to have them up and running by next year. And then what you see here, just again, there's this takes money, and fortunately, again, we've got policy in the state. The Climate and Equitable Jobs Act provides about $80 million a year to do the trainings that need to happen. And one strategy to make that happen, a key strategy, is to set up 13 different hubs across the state. And right now, the intention is to have those hubs up and running by next year. So people know where they can go, that there's a training center in their community, that they are going to be positioned to be able to take the jobs in this growing sector of the economy. There's much, much more that we can do. And I keep talking about the Climate and Equitable Jobs Act. It's certainly a cornerstone of addressing climate and creating the jobs that we need. But there's much, much more that we can be doing to specifically address the building sector, which is here in Northeastern Illinois, 2/3 of our carbon pollution comes from buildings. And so we just need to specifically target that with policy as well. One of the best ways to do that is with building performance standard. It's the most powerful policy tool to drive efficiency in existing buildings. Put real simply, it requires buildings of a certain size to meet a certain energy efficiency performance standard, and that over time, over 3 to 5 years, each interval, they have to actually get better and better and better at being energy efficient. That's going to create a ton of local jobs in the city of Chicago by having the city of Chicago having a building performance standard. And we know that because there are a number of other cities that have already started to pass similar policies, like in Boston, Washington, D.C., Denver, and in New York. And what you see there is some stats where they're looking at in New York City, there's expected to be a huge boom in investment in retrofitting buildings to make them more energy efficient, potentially a 13-fold increase in the amount of money that's going towards retrofitting buildings to making them more energy efficient. And that's anticipated to create up to 141,000 more jobs in New York City by 2030. So that's really important. This is a critical policy. It's the most meaningful policy that can actually decarbonize our buildings while creating lots of local jobs. One of the, in fact, at the federal level, the Biden administration actually has created a coalition of states and local governments to actually support them in developing building performance standards and then enacting them. And Evanston and the city of Chicago have signed on to join that coalition to be able to leverage that support, and have made a commitment to pass a building performance standard by Earth Day 2024, which at this point just isn't that far away. And with that, I'll turn it over to my colleague Ryan to talk a little bit about some of the opportunity we have with the city of Chicago.
Hi, everyone. I'm Ryan Wilmington with Illinois Green. And as Brian and Michaela have been talking about, we've seen the massive benefits that legislation like the IRA and CEJA have had on the clean buildings and clean jobs sector. And we want to keep this momentum going forward, which is why Illinois Green, in coalition with stakeholders from across the environmental sector, have been pushing for Chicago to pass a clean and affordable buildings policy. And there's real momentum toward this policy, and we are hoping, knock on wood, that this legislation will get introduced in the upcoming October 4th City Council meeting. But the exciting things that this legislation would do would be creating the first steps toward establishing a building performance standard, like Brian just talked about, in the city of Chicago. So this legislation would create a working group to figure out how Chicago could implement that type of policy and require Mayor Johnson to introduce the policy on Earth Day 2024. And then the second piece of this legislation would be creating a carbon dioxide emissions limit for all new construction. So effectively, what this does is ban all fossil fuel hookups in new buildings. So replacing your gas stoves and furnaces with newer, more sustainable and healthier options like induction stoves and heat pumps. So what we need to figure out now is how we get this policy passed, because the city of Chicago has a lot of problems and there are a lot of things on the mayor's plate. So we need to get this policy to become a priority for the city of Chicago. And Illinois Green believes that engaging with professionals and sharing professional expertise with legislators is going to be vital to getting that accomplished. So we've already done some work. We've had 150 building professionals sign on to a letter supporting building decarbonization policy in the city of Chicago. And we sent that to the incoming mayor. And additionally, we've been working to get elected officials to tour green buildings that are across the city and area. And we just want to show these elected officials that green buildings are here, they are happening, and there are professionals working on it who need their support to create legislation to take the next steps to build more sustainably. And this is where we hope people like you can come in, because elected officials want to hear from their constituents, and they want to hear the cool things that people are doing. So we want to help professionals talk to their other people about building decarbonization and any work that you've done in the sustainability field. And if you are also aware of any green building projects that you're involved in, or any of your colleagues are, we would love to show these off to elected officials to just kind of let them know that green building is the future. It's happening now. And it's not an activist pipe dream. So if you are interested in helping make the clean and affordable buildings policy a concrete next step for the city of Chicago, please reach out to me or Brian, and we can work on getting you set up with all the logistics and resources you might need. And the last thing we wanted to share is a cool project that Illinois Green has been involved in called the Building Energy Resources Hub. And this project is designed to be separate, but work in tandem with our policy goals. It is a one-stop shop for all the information you might need for navigating the confusing energy and building landscape. So we want to simplify and create a space for where contractors, engineers, and other professionals can go and find any information they might need about technology primers, financing projects through grants, loans, and other means, finding professionals who are certified to work in with new and emerging technologies, and as well as providing learning experiences for these new technologies. So we don't want to pass policy that is impossible to actually enact. So we're hoping that this resource is going to help develop the workforce into one that can actually build net zero buildings easily and affordably. And that is all I have. If we want to turn it back over to Samira.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Ryan. Incredibly informative. I would love to open this up or open up the line for questions. If folks have any, in 1 second, and I will share my screen with a nice question slide. Please feel free to raise your hands though, or drop any questions in the chat. So far, I'm not seeing any.
I don't want to put anybody on the spot, but I see a green building professional in the audience, Juanita Garcia, who works with Pepper Construction. A great example of some of the amazing work that her firm does to assist developers in meeting their goals in wanting to build new buildings that are more energy efficient and less carbon polluting. I don't know, Juanita, if you want to share any projects you've worked on or anything about your experience, but thought I'd call you out nonetheless.
Thanks for calling me out, Brian. But yeah, I think we're kind of across the board trying to work towards, maybe not net zero on every project, but how can we chip away at some decarbonizing on every project, right? So where can we do that, and looking at opportunities to do that with energy efficiency and wherever we can with solar.
Thank you for sharing.
Sure.
I have a question in the chat from Claudia. In regards to retrofitting existing homes, is there a plan for the gas appliances being replaced?
So I'll jump in first, and then I'd ask my other panelists to join in, or Samira too. First, I think the important thing on the policy that we're talking about, there's no policy that we're considering or advocating that would require individual homeowners to retrofit their existing homes. So for example, around electrifying buildings, the goal there is first, new construction. As we build new buildings, let's get them off gas. But there are services and programs that are available for homeowners who do want to do the retrofits voluntarily. In fact, the city of Chicago, Mayor Johnson, they just proposed providing $30 million in grants to homeowners who might want to retrofit their homes, replace gas furnaces or gas stoves with all electric options.
And I'll just add that the Inflation Reduction Act has incentives and tax credits that can really make the upfront costs of like transitioning to a heat pump, for example, much more accessible. And if folks haven't already, check out the Rewiring America site, because they have a great like calculator for homeowners to plug in information about themselves to see like what of those incentives are available to them.
And additionally, the mayor has proposed about $15 million in funding for low-income households to fund retrofits, so that households who may not be able to afford replacing their gas appliances would have the means to do so.
I had a quick follow-up on Claudia's previous question around the waste. Claudia, you're welcome to come off mute if you want to expand, but my assumption is around what would happen to old gas infrastructure as we switch over.
Yeah, being the waste girl on the call, that's exactly my question, because old cars, old furnaces, old stoves, it's all waste. And is there a plan?
That's a great question. I don't know about policy that is specifically addressing that. And I'm assuming you're thinking about construction waste. So as we retrofit or build new buildings, how do we make sure that that we're not generating undue waste, or what do we do with the waste? And I don't know specifically of policy that's looking at how to address that, but it's something that's really important.
Okay. And I have a question from Linda. Can anyone talk about job fairs and the possibility of organizing a job fair event?
I would love to organize a job fair. And I actually think that there's been a lot of talk as well, just how do we inspire recent graduates or folks going into college to start thinking about careers in these new in this new economy, this new clean energy economy. And I think that that's really, really important. One thing that Illinois Green is doing is we've got a mentorship program where our green building professionals are matched with either young professionals or folks who are in school right now to help them start thinking about and help them as they start to develop their career over time in this space. And so thinking like, great, you want to be a building engineer. How about thinking about how to become a building engineer that focuses in sustainability and retrofitting existing buildings and things like that. But yes, I think there is lots of room and a huge need for career fairs.
And then a follow-up to that, I'm seeing in the chat from Corey, related to the job fair question, what are you hearing from employers around what are you hearing from employers around what are the base qualifications they are looking for in potential employees?
That's a big question because there are just so many different types of jobs in this space. And I think that more important than, well, I think the best way to kind of look at where the qualifications are, what qualifications are important, is through the workforce development programs that are being set up, because the intention there is not just to train lots of people in how to do solar installation or be the electricians who understand how to connect solar panels to the grid, but also to make sure that they have access to jobs. So I think something that's really important is, how do you link these workforce development programs so that as people are getting trained, there's a pipeline for them to actually get jobs. And certainly that's part of the plan, so that employers are connected to the workforce programs and they're getting the workforce that they know has been trained and has the qualifications they need. Hopefully that's just all giving you and from the presentation as well, that this is just, we're on a new horizon here. There's just so much opportunity and there's so much momentum. It's a pretty exciting time right now. And it feels like, with the billions of dollars that are being provided to incentivize and grow the industry from the Inflation Reduction Act, matched with what the state of Illinois did with CEJA, matched with the potential for the city of Chicago to further leverage that opportunity. It's a pretty exciting time.
Can I ask
And
a
it
quick
is.
follow-up question? This is Corey.
Go ahead, Corey.
So thinking specifically about the jobs that are created in decarbonizing buildings, what percentage would you say require a certain amount of training, and what percentage would be on the job training, entry level? And that's really where I was directing my question around what employers are looking for, if there are jobs that don't require training outside of what they would learn on the job.
I don't have a stat. I don't know if Michaela, if the E2 jobs report has looked at that and broken down the jobs. I would go ahead.
Sorry. Well, I was going to first just answer like anecdotally that there are a lot of jobs that require very little outside training. And that doesn't mean that they're not specialized and skilled jobs, but the training happens on the job. And I say that anecdotally because in just this year's Clean Jobs in West report, we added a handful of profiles of workers in the industry. And most of the workers that I profiled came into their current roles with very little experience and then learned on the job. But I actually think, I don't have it off the top of my head, but I do think in one report that we had recently, not just in the Clean Jobs in West report we released on Tuesday, we actually looked at like education level, which is not exactly the same thing, but I do have those numbers somewhere and I can follow up with you, Corey, if you're interested in that.
That'd be great. Thanks.
Any other questions from folks?
I just wanted to put a spotlight to one of the things Michaela said earlier in her presentation that I hope folks, took away, which was, I think a lot of when we talk about clean energy sector jobs, people immediately think about that person who is installing a solar panel. But in E2's report, they make it very clear that the vast majority, I don't know, Michaela, is it 2/3, maybe more than 2/3 of the jobs are actually associated with energy efficiency, making our homes and businesses and schools more energy efficient is where the vast majority of jobs are.
Really important point to highlight. Thank you, Brian. Okay. Not seeing any more questions. Any final thoughts from our speakers before I give a quick ordinance update and just tee up a couple future items?
Thank you.
Yeah,
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
All right. So thanks everyone for joining IUC for our Lunch and Learn deep dive, clean buildings and clean jobs. Recordings of these sessions will be available on our YouTube page, YouTube channel, and our website. A few updates and ways that you can get involved and plug into this work. As Ryan mentioned during the presentation, the Clean and Affordable Buildings Ordinance is expected to be introduced on October 4th to Chicago City Council. IUC and our partners are tracking this pretty closely, and that is the latest update. I would suggest following us on social media for the latest. And to get involved with the grassroots effort around the Clean and Affordable Buildings Ordinance, and also just general utility affordability, utility bill affordability. There is a People's Gas rally happening on Thursday, October 19th, from 11 to 12:30 at Chicago City Hall, and also at the Blandick Building, which is located at 160 North LaSalle. And this is for an ICC hearing on People's Gas rate hike. Next, our following Lunch and Learn, Illinois Dirty Air Problem will feature guest speakers from Neighbors for Environmental Justice and also the Respiratory Health Association. The date for that is this coming Tuesday, September 26th at 1 p.m. Paloma already dropped the registration link in the chat for you all. And then I finally just want to prop up that today is the final day to register for IEC's annual Environmental Leadership Dinner, which is happening a week from today on September 29th in the evening. So thank you all so much for joining us. Have a great rest of your afternoon and have a great weekend.